My name is Donnell Falk, and I'm 28 years old. Everything started at the beginning of June, when my mom gathered us in the living room and said very calmly, "We're not going on vacation this year. Money's tight." She explained that inflation had hit hard, my dad's hours were cut in the spring, and it just wasn't the right time. I didn't question it. I nodded, accepted it, and quietly decided I'd keep the $6,500 I'd been saving for a family trip in my high-yield savings account for another year. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even disappointed. I told myself it was a rough year, that families make sacrifices, and that was that. In fact, I offered to help out more. I told them I'd keep covering the summer utility bills, electricity, water, internet, just like I'd been doing for the past 2 years. No one thanked me, but I didn't expect them to. That was how it always worked. I helped quietly. They accepted quietly. We never talked about it. Then, last Thursday, my phone lit up with 3 credit card alerts in less than a minute. The first one made my stomach drop. $3,800 charged to a luxury yacht rental company in San Diego. I stared at the screen, convinced it had to be a mistake. Before I could even process that, a second alert came through. $950 for a sunset dinner cruise. Then a third. $10,200 to a high-end spa for deluxe therapeutic treatments and a champagne brunch. All 3 charges were pulled from the joint travel wallet my family and I had set up years ago, the same account my dad had always called for emergencies only. The same account where I was the only one who ever deposited money. I didn't panic. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there for about 30 seconds, letting something cold and very clear settle in my chest. Then I opened my banking app, clicked dispute on all 3 charges, froze the travel account, and flagged everything with the fraud department. No speeches, no warnings, just action. That evening, they were supposed to board. A yacht for 12 people, fully catered, drinks included, a 4-day floating luxury escape. I didn't say a word to anyone. I didn't even text. I just waited. About an hour later, my phone buzzed. It was my sister Megan. Her message was in all caps, frantic and furious. "What did you do?" I replied with a single sentence. "I corrected a billing error." That was all it took. My phone exploded. Voicemails from my mom, screaming about how I humiliated them in front of her church friend's family at the marina. My dad yelling, calling me ungrateful, selfish, a traitor. Megan accusing me of ruining everything. My other sister sent just one line, "I hope you're proud." They were furious. I wasn't. I felt strangely calm, like I'd finally stepped out of a role I'd been playing for years without realizing it. The next morning, my dad showed up at my apartment. No call, no text, just pounding on the door like he owned the place. When I opened it, he didn't even step inside. He stood there shaking, red-faced, and launched straight into it. "You've ruined us," he said. "You embarrassed this family. You have no idea what you've done." I let him talk. I didn't interrupt. When he finally ran out of words, I told him the truth. That money was mine. I'd been saving it for 4 years. That travel account existed for trips we took together, not for secret yacht charters while they told me we were broke. And the worst part wasn't the spending, it was the lying. They lied to my face, stole from me, and assumed I'd never notice. If they had asked, I would have helped, honestly. Instead, they treated me like an open wallet they didn't even need to explain themselves to. They didn't know it yet, but that moment wasn't the end. It was the beginning. 2 days passed without a word from them. No calls, no texts, just silence, which almost fooled me into thinking maybe shame had finally settled in. Maybe they were embarrassed enough to sit with what they'd done. I should have known better. Silence has never been their way of owning anything. Silence is how they regroup. On the 3rd morning, there was a knock on my door. I didn't answer. I already knew who it was. My apartment has a peephole camera, and when I checked the feed, there was my dad, standing stiffly in the hallway with his old fishing cap pulled low, arms crossed like he was bracing for a storm. He knocked again, louder. Then again. I watched him for almost 5 minutes, pacing, checking his phone, knocking like persistence alone could force me back into line. I turned away, crawled back into bed, and let him stand there until he finally gave up. An hour later, the calls started. First Megan, then my mom, then my other sister. When I didn't pick up, the voicemails piled up. My mom cried, said I'd humiliated her in front of people she'd known for decades. My sister accused me of acting superior. My dad finally sent a text that summed up exactly how they saw me. "You're a coward. You ruined a memory your mother worked hard to plan. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. Fix this." I didn't respond. That evening, I did something I should have done years ago. I logged into the joint travel wallet and pulled the full transaction history. Not just the yacht, not just the spa, everything from the past year. Airbnb deposits, restaurant tabs, shopping charges, weekend trips I'd never heard about. It wasn't a one-time lapse, it was a pattern. They hadn't gone broke. They'd been spending my savings behind my back while telling me to tighten my belt and accept that times were hard. The clarity was chilling. I called the bank and told them the truth, that I never authorized those charges, that the account had been misused. I gave them permission to pull IP addresses, device logs, phone records, anything they needed. The account stayed frozen, and an investigation was opened. Then I logged into another account, the one I used to pay the family's monthly utilities. Electricity, water, internet. Every single bill I'd quietly covered for the past 2 years. I turned them all off. The reaction was immediate. My mom called first. I didn't answer. She left 5 voicemails in a row. I listened to the first 2. She was screaming, said the power had been cut mid-shower, that they were sitting in the dark, that this was childish and spiteful and exactly how people end up alone. The last part sounded like a threat, but it made me laugh. I'd been paying their bills since I was 22. I was 28 now. Megan sent a screenshot of a declined Venmo transfer with the caption, "So this is who you are now." My other sister followed an hour later. "You think this makes you look strong? It doesn't. It just proves we were right not to trust you." That one stuck with me. Not to trust me. They'd stolen from me, lied to me, and now I was the untrustworthy one. That night my dad called again. This time I answered. He didn't ease into it. He never does. He told me I was a disgrace, that I was acting like a stranger, that I was playing with things I didn't understand, that I'd ruined them. He said I'd embarrassed him as a father, that the whole family looked at me differently now, that I was making a scene because I couldn't handle being left out of one trip. That's when I finally snapped. I told him this had nothing to do with being left out. It was about being lied to, used, and treated like a personal bank account. I told him they could have asked me for help honestly. Instead, they stole from me for years and assumed I'd never notice. He didn't deny it. He just said very quietly, "You'll regret doing this to us." I answered just as calmly, "No, you'll regret doing this to me because it's never happening again." I hung up. I shut off my phone, and for the first time in a very long time, I went to sleep without guilt sitting on my chest. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. They always explode first, then they plan. I woke up the next morning with that quiet, buzzing awareness that comes after a line has been crossed for good. Not panic, not regret, just certainty, the kind that settles in your bones and tells you there's no going back to how things were. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and started doing what I should have done a long time ago. I followed the money. I printed out every transaction tied to the joint travel wallet, not just the yacht, not just the spa, everything. I laid the pages out across my table like evidence in a courtroom. Airbnb deposits in cities I'd never visited, restaurant tabs from weekends they'd told me they were staying home to save, boutique purchases, ride shares. It added up fast, tens of thousands over the years, all siphoned quietly from an account I funded alone. They hadn't been struggling. They'd been comfortable. They just preferred that comfort come from me. Once you see something clearly, you can't unsee it. All those little moments suddenly made sense. The casual way my mom accepted my help with bills, the lack of surprise when I offered to cover utilities, the confidence with which they told me we were broke. They weren't lying out of desperation. They were lying because it worked. By noon, the calls from extended families started. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in years called to ask why I'd canceled a vacation my parents had been planning for months. A cousin texted to say my mom was devastated and not eating. Someone else suggested I should be the bigger person. Every message carried the same assumption, that I was the problem, that I'd overreacted, that I owed them repair work. None of them asked what actually happened. None of them asked if I was okay. That afternoon, Megan took things public. A friend sent me a screenshot because I wasn't even following her anymore. It was an Instagram post of her standing in front of a gas station, captioned, "This is what happens when family betrays you." Maddie commented underneath, "It's always the quiet ones who stab you in the back." The comments were full of sympathy, people offering help, people asking what I'd done. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I just watched them rewrite the story in real time. Then something stranger happened. I got an email from my apartment leasing office asking me to verify a request for income and employment records. According to them, someone had called pretending to be me, saying they needed documentation for tax purposes. The office flagged it because the caller couldn't answer basic security questions. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. This wasn't guilt tripping anymore. This was escalation. I called my bank again and expanded the fraud report to include possible identity theft. I changed every password, locked my credit, set alerts on everything. Then I started documenting screenshots, dates, times, names. If they were going to keep pushing, I was going to be ready. That evening, my dad left another voicemail. His tone was different this time, quieter, more controlled. "I don't know who you think you are now, but we're not going to let you destroy this family." The irony almost made me laugh. They'd stolen from me, lied to me, slandered me, and tried to access my private records. And I was the one destroying the family. I decided to meet them once, not to make peace, not to apologize, just to see how far into their own version of reality they'd gone. We met at a diner halfway between our homes, neutral territory. My dad was already there, sitting rigidly in a booth. Megan and Maddie were with him. My mom arrived last, like she was walking into a courtroom. They started softly, said they were worried, said they just wanted to talk. Then Megan leaned forward and said, "We all make mistakes, Dawn. You could have handled this differently." I asked her, "What mistake did I make?" No one answered. My mom finally said I didn't need to cut off everything, that it was cruel. I told them I was done being the family's ATM. That the line was crossed the moment they used my money and lied about it. That this wasn't about the yacht. It was about years of taking and never once asking if I was okay. That's when my dad dropped the act. He said I was acting like a king, punishing peasants. That I'd become arrogant. That I wasn't raised to be like this. I looked him in the eye and said, "You're right. I wasn't raised. I was used." He stood up and walked out. Megan followed. Maddie glared at me like she'd memorized my face for later. My mom stayed behind for a moment longer and said, "This family isn't going to forget this." I replied, "Good. Maybe now you'll remember what you did." Then she left too. After that meeting, things went quiet again. Not calm. Quiet like a held breath. I knew they were planning something. They always did. Boundaries were puzzles to them, not rules. And sure enough, the next wave came faster than I expected. It started with a letter in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just my name in my dad's handwriting. Inside was a printed document titled Notice of Family Obligation. I laughed out loud when I saw it. He tried to make it look official. It claimed I owed the family $23,000 for years of unpaid support, listing groceries, utilities from when I was a teenager, even Wi-Fi access from over a decade ago. At the bottom, 2 words were typed in bold. Make it right. I threw it away and blocked his number again. The next day, Megan tried to get into my building, telling security she was checking on me because I was having mental health issues. Security escorted her out when she refused to leave. 2 days later, Maddie posted a video of herself fake crying in front of an empty fridge, captioned, "When your sister cuts you off and your parents can't afford groceries anymore." Someone from work sent it to me, concerned. That's when it finally clicked. This was never about money. This was about control, and they were losing it. After the diner meeting, the silence that followed felt unnatural, like the calm before a storm everyone pretends not to see coming. I knew my family too well to believe they were done. They didn't accept boundaries. They tested them, poked at them, tried to bend them until they snapped. And sure enough, they didn't disappoint. 2 weeks passed with no contact, and then August arrived. The first of the month came and went without me sending a single payment. No electricity, no water, no internet, no phone plans. For 2 years, I had paid those bills like clockwork, quietly, reliably, without reminders. They counted on that. I could almost picture the moment it sank in for them, the realization that I hadn't forgotten. I'd chosen not to. By noon, my phone was vibrating nonstop. 13 missed calls, 32 messages across every app they still had access to. The most revealing one came from my dad. "You've made your point. Now fix it." Not an apology, not even confusion, just an order. It was almost impressive how quickly he reverted to command mode. As if I were still a child, he could ground into compliance. That evening, my mom sent a video message. She was pacing the living room in the dark, voice shaking, saying my dad was yelling, my sisters were crying, and she couldn't believe I would do this after everything they'd given me. Everything they'd given me. I watched the video twice, not because it moved me, but because it confirmed something important. Even now, they still didn't understand what they'd done. Or maybe they did, and they just didn't care. I sent one final message to the family group chat, the same one they'd used to coordinate their secret vacation plans. "I'm done being your backup plan. Megan and Maddie are adults. Let them get jobs. I've paid your bills for 6 years without a thank you. I'm not doing it anymore. This isn't revenge, it's clarity." I hit send and muted the chat. 5 minutes later, Megan called. I let it ring. Maddie called next. Then my mom. Then my dad. When I finally answered my dad's call, he was quiet. Not angry, not yelling. Just quiet. "Is this it?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "This is it." He muttered that I was making a mistake. I told him the mistake was believing my value came from how much I gave. Then I hung up. 3 days passed. No messages, no calls. The silence felt heavier this time, but not threatening. More resigned. My aunt texted me, the one who usually stayed out of family drama. "Your parents came over. They're exhausted. Megan and Maddie both applied for jobs." I didn't reply. That wasn't my victory to claim. Then the letter arrived. Plain white envelope, no return address. Inside was a photograph I hadn't seen in years. Me, maybe 12, sitting on a beach towel between my parents, holding a juice box and squinting into the sun. On the back, written in tight handwriting, were the words, "Remember who you were before all this." I stared at it for a long time, not because it softened me, but because it felt like one last attempt to rewrite the story, to pull me back into a version of myself that never existed outside their control. I didn't respond. I didn't call. I didn't send the photo back. I put it in a drawer and closed it. That was when I realized something that felt like freedom settling into my chest. They weren't letting go, but they were running out of ways to reach me. The threats had failed. The guilt had failed. The public shaming had failed. All they had left were memories and nostalgia, and those didn't have power over me anymore. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. After that, the world didn't end. Nothing dramatic happened. No police at my door, no legal threats that went anywhere, no sudden apology that tied things up neatly. What happened instead was something quieter and far more permanent. Life went on without them pulling at it. The first week felt strange. I kept expecting my phone to buzz, expecting another attempt, another angle, another emotional ambush. It didn't. Mornings were calm. I drank my coffee without reading guilt disguised as concern. I worked without interruptions. I slept without the low-grade anxiety I'd carried for years, the constant readiness to fix something that was never actually mine to fix. Bills stayed paid. My account stayed secure. My credit report stayed clean. Every practical piece of my life worked exactly as it should when no one else was quietly siphoning from it. That alone told me everything I needed to know. A month later, a friend forwarded me a photo she thought I should see. Megan standing behind a counter at a pet supply store, stocking shelves. Maddie bagging groceries at a local market, her name tag crooked. They looked tired, not broken, just ordinary. For the first time, they were living the reality I'd been carrying for years. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt neutral, and that surprised me more than anything else. My parents stayed quiet. No calls, no texts, no cryptic messages. When people asked me how my family was doing, I answered honestly but briefly, "We're not in contact." I didn't explain. I didn't justify it. I learned that silence, when chosen, can be more powerful than any argument. The strangest part was how quickly my sense of self shifted once I stopped being needed. For years, my role had been clear. I was the fixer. the backup, the reliable one, the one who smoothed things over and made sure everyone landed softly, even if I didn't. Without that role, I had space. Space to think. Space to want things without calculating who would benefit or be disappointed. I started planning trips again, not family trips, just mine. I redecorated my apartment, replaced things I'd been meaning to replace but always put off, because someone else might need that money. I took a cooking class on weeknights, something small and indulgent. I laughed more. I didn't flinch when my phone rang. One evening, months later, I pulled out the photo my parents sent. The beach towel, the juice box, the sun. I studied it without nostalgia blurring my vision. I didn't see an innocent version of myself they were trying to reclaim. I saw a kid who learned early how to shrink to keep the peace. I folded the photo once, carefully, and put it back in the drawer. Not as a wound, as a reminder of what I'd outgrown. The last update I ever got about them came indirectly. A cousin mentioned my parents were adjusting. That word again, adjusting. As if everything that happened was just a shift in circumstances, not the result of years of choices. I nodded, wished them well, and changed the subject. I don't hate my family. That surprised people when they found out. Hate would mean they still had power over me. What I feel instead is distance. Clean, deliberate distance. The kind that lets you breathe. They taught me a lot without ever meaning to. They taught me that generosity without boundaries becomes entitlement. That love, when conditional, isn't love at all. And that walking away doesn't make you cruel, it makes you honest. I didn't destroy my family. I stopped financing the illusion that we were one. And in doing that, I finally gave myself something they never could: peace.